It has been a long time coming, but we finally have the man himself joining the show. Late Kick Live's Josh Pate from 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports HQ, who is one of, if not the only, I'm pretty sure he's the only national football person that I watch with regularity. He is appointment viewing, and he's going to talk about Michigan's run last year, a little bit looking forward as well. So excited to bring him on to this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It has been a long time coming. I have teased this periodically over the course of the last year or so, but we're finally bringing in the man himself. One of the I think it's the only football-related, sports-related podcast that I watch or listen to, and that is from this man right here, Josh Pate, the host of Late Kick Live on 24/7 Sports. You can also see him on CBS Sports HQ. Josh, thank you so much for coming and joining us in the midst of not just your show, but you've been out storm chasing. You've been on Blaine and Company, Crane and Company. I just named one of the Crane brothers there on the Daily Wire. You've been out ranking different high-end gas stations. You've been having a pretty awesome summer. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, man. First off, thank you for having me. It feels like you and I saw each other 47 times last season with the way it went for Michigan. And every time it was, hey, you coming on the show? Yeah. I'm coming on the show. But we didn't nail down the time. So we finally got this thing nailed down. Yeah, it's been a busy spring. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take that group of people who use the word off season and the people who claim nothing happens in the spring. And I'm just loading up the spring with as many different things as I can. So it feels like it's flown by for me. When I was a fan and did nothing in media back in the day, this is the time of year that felt like it moved as slow as molasses in December, as Meemaw would say. And now, dude, I feel like the kickoff of like week one is not too far away.
You know, I one of the things that I find to be appointment viewing quite often is I'm always looking for that Saturday tweet of how many more Saturdays. Every single Saturday, there you are in the cornfield. We're waiting to find out how many more Saturdays until we get to see football again. Now, granted, someone who lives in Michigan, it's been 70 degrees for the last couple of days. I'm not that eager because with football also comes overcast, cold. Yeah. I need a little warmth before we get to that. But nonetheless, like you said, we saw each other quite a few times. You have also this video that's kind of gone a bit viral, little just like kind of cut out of your show talking about Michigan being the last great college football team. Feels like you got a lot of pushback from that, but obviously Michigan fans loved it. But when was it when you kind of recognized like, okay, this team really is maybe has that opportunity to do the whole thing?
Well, I realized they had a shot to do it at the beginning of the season. They weren't my national championship pick, but they had a shot to do it. I think the way the season played out in retrospect is something that I look back on as saying that's kind of the last great college football team in the sense that, you know, anyone listening to this has grown up learning what a college football team is. The new era is NIL and portal, and it's like watching free agency happen. Up until this point, all of us had known college football to be you go and recruit a high school class every year and bring in 25 or so of them, and they grow up together and they fight together. And in Michigan's case, with those guys, when they were freshmen, they get pounded by Georgia, and then they come back-to-back years and they win the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State. They make the playoff. They come up short, though. And then their final shot at it, not only do they beat Ohio State again, win the Big Ten again, they go to the playoff, they go to overtime, they beat Alabama, Saban's last game, and then they win the title. And that's storybook, but someone's going to win a title every year. So I didn't mean there's never going to be a great collection of players again. We will never see a team assembled like that, developed like that. You know as well as I do, some of those guys had opportunities to leave. year before last because there were NIL opportunities out there. Because anytime you got a good roster, folks who have done poor work on roster construction and development want to pick yours apart. They stayed. And all of those things are rarities. But combined, there'll be borderline impossibilities for the sport to duplicate in the future. So in retrospect, it's such a pleasure to have watched it. And I got to see them in person multiple times. All the big wins, the Penn State game, I was there. Ohio State, I was there. Bama, I was there. National title, I was there, which is a case in point to how often we ran into each other last year. But that's storybook stuff. So you say that, and of course, that's going to rub a lot of folks the wrong way who are anti-Michigan. It rubs a lot of folks the wrong way who think they went about things in an underhanded fashion, which is funny because you and I talked about this at the Penn State game last year when the Connor Stalions stuff was the hottest story in college football. And I was taking a lot of flack from Michigan fans because of the way I was covering it. And I went back the other day. I watched some of the videos that we did during that period. And I actually don't look back and say, man, I wish I would have handled that differently. Now, you got to understand something. I'm doing a national college football show. I'm not doing a local Michigan show. So I got to talk about things in a little different context or else I'll get crucified the other way. My stance then, and especially my stance now when folks want to call me out on the other side is you want to bring me some hard and fast evidence. You want to throw sanctions their way. Like if something fundamentally alters the way I view that team, I'm happy to change the way I talk about it. But I said then, and I'll say now, like I'm gonna learn from like past NCAA investigations. I'm gonna learn from past allegation heavy teams. I'm going to wait until it gets brought to me. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy it. And if that thing gets redacted or whatever later, that happens. But nothing's happened so far. And then if I'm a Michigan fan, I couldn't care less about any of it because I saw what I saw last year. They're not taking it away. I do not. I'm going to speak personally now. I do not believe that whatever happened in an underhanded manner contributed to them ultimately being able to win a championship. Like I'm standing there on the field watching these games. They're the better football team. That's why they're winning the games. So storybook run, man. I don't care if you're a 10-year-old Michigan fan. You may live your entire life and not experience anything that special again.
We're going to continue on here in just a moment with Josh Pate, and we are going to do so here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, game off. All right, I know we got to pause right here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in the game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments, whether you work together or build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big, big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. You obviously know, because I actually divulged to you who one of my main sources was in all of this. So it's got to be funny when you see comments specifically regarding the allegations, and I don't remember if this was on your Twitter, if it was on someone else who had posted your video, but there you start seeing people being, kind of creating a lot of stuff out of thin air, right? Like the whole reason why they were able to beat Alabama is because Connor Stalions was able to do this and he was able to do that. So obviously I'm with you just because I understand the nature of what actually happened versus just kind of this hyperbole that a lot of rival fans want to come up with.
Hey, let me say this. So I know a ton of folks at Alabama as well. I've talked to a ton of folks at Alabama about that Michigan game. No one at Alabama, no one on the team or on the coaching staff has so much as mentioned that as being a contributing factor for them losing the game to Michigan a single time. So it must be either that it's incorrect or that Twitter knows more than the folks on the actual team do.
Well, I do trust Michigan sucks 420, 69, 69. They've got inside sources that I could never even get. But I want to speak really quickly on kind of that larger factor of college football, because you did touch on this idea that people will kind of come at you because you're against us or you're for us or whatever. I've always understood and I've always appreciated your insight, because you are taking a 30,000 foot view of all of the teams. How do you kind of walk that line as someone who is trying to look at things from a national perspective? Because between you and listening to Sirius XM periodically, that's the way, since I'm hyper focused on one team, that I can kind of know and understand the landscape of college football. How do you maintain that line of that balance of trying to be fair in all of that?
It's a good question. So the first thing that I try and do is I try and save criticism. I try and save a bulk of the criticism for the season. So, and this is just psychological. I don't believe that spring is the time that I should be sitting here and pointing out the terminal flaws in teams. It's not even smart programming to do it that way. This is glass half full type of season. This is summer is preview magazine season, and it's what could happen. There'll be plenty of time when you get into fall camp in the season and people start to expose themselves that you can start talking about flaws. So that's this time of year. Then as you get into the season, you immerse yourself as much as you can. And you also try and understand, I'm never going to go into the Michigan market and cover the University of Michigan football team more in depth than you are, or a number of those other guys in the market are. But someone who's listening in Fresno, California may not necessarily be exposed to that layer of the market, and someone in Olympia, Washington, ditto. So what I try and do is make sure I'm far more informed team to team than the average national type or national fan would be. And there's no shortcut to that. You just have to immerse yourself in it. Now, do you whiff every now and then? Of course. Game picks or anything of that nature, yeah, you're going to whiff now and then. Everybody does. But can you make people smarter and more informed for having listened to your content? That's really all we're trying to do. And also, I used to work in a fabric warehouse, and we would clock out. We would go to lunch every day, same barbecue spot every day, 5 days a week. Me and my buddies would meet up there, and all we'd do is sit there and talk about college football for like 50 minutes before we had to clock back in. That's how I try and make the show sound, where just you and your buddies talking. It happens to be one dude staring at a camera, and his buddies are listening, but that's the format. That's the makeup of the show. And, we've scaled it pretty good. It's not perfect. We try and make it better every day, but that's the vibe we at least try to have on that show.
I totally understand that from someone who often does episodes of this show that are almost a facsimile of the conversation that I maybe had with my best friend earlier in the day. It's like a warm up, right? Sometimes I go into a day and being like, I don't really know what I'm going to even talk about today. And before I know it, I'm like, well, I can basically rehash the conversation I had about Michigan with my best friend at that point. Last year, around this time, when you were looking at prospective national champions, you had picked Ohio State. And I found that your rubric for that was interesting. Specifically because I'm looking at those 2 early mock drafts right now. And while Ohio State had the projected most first rounds last year, it didn't win the national championship. Obviously, most everyone, there's some rivals that tune into this show for whatever sick reason. But they obviously didn't win the national championship. Most people are happy about that tune into this show. But Michigan right now in the early mock drafts is up there with the 4 guys that are potentially expected to go in that first round next year, yet they aren't getting a whole lot of love. So with that in mind, what's kind of your overview when you look at this upcoming Michigan team?
Yeah, I had forgotten we did that. So what you're talking about is around this time last year, my producer came to me and said, hey, did you know that if you look at past national champions, the correlation of the team that had the most draft picks the following spring it's really heavily correlation, which is not rocket science. Teams with a bunch of NFL players tend to win at a higher level. So I said, all right, well, let's have some fun with it. I said, go find me all the mock drafts, aggregate the mock drafts together. Who does it project to have the most first rounders? And it was Ohio State. So I do this segment, and it's really tongue in cheek, but I should have smirked more in it because I did it. And I said, hey, science, I use the word science a lot. Science says that Ohio State's going to win the title this upcoming year. Well, our brilliant social media department took it and presented it on like the CBS platforms and the 24/7 platforms as this dude's rock solid pick. Like he's nailed himself to the wall and it took off. And so, no, Ohio State didn't win the title. It's funny you asked me this because I just had this talk with that same producer. I believe it was Tuesday, so 2 days ago as we're recording. And it was just that. It was, hey, it's time to get the mock drafts together again. I'm going to really smirk this time when I say it so no one misunderstands me. But it's funny you say that because you're right. Michigan's going to have a lot of guys on those mock drafts. And Michigan is not expected to be in that conversation. They are expected to fall off. And you'll probably have Ohio State in there again. You have Georgia in there again. You'll have the normal suspects in there again. I can't say I've taken a dive into the mock drafts yet. I'll be interested to see how Michigan stacks up there. Because if I put a video out that says it is science that Michigan's about to repeat, you have seen no internet storm like you would see if I were to say something like that.
Well, I'll give you $20 if you say it just for the sake of saying it and just to kind of see what happens as a social experiment. But no, I wouldn't do that to you because I know how vehement college football fans are of their teams. Michigan fans, you are some of those as well, but certainly some of the other fan bases in the world can get pretty upset when Michigan has any success. Josh, very, very excited to have you on the show. I won't keep you beyond this. So thank you so much. Again, you can find him on YouTube at Late Kick Live. Hit that follow button, subscribe, like, all of the stuff. I have done all of that. So you know, you can also find that in podcast form, which I was very fortunate to find. I think it was 2 years ago, flying into Manhattan for the Rutgers game. I actually listened. I was like sitting there on the plane and we got Wi-Fi. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I already kind of watched the half-hour show I was going to watch. And I was like, I think I could probably see if I can listen to Late Kick. And I did. The Uber driver was very confused. But that's how that went. You can find him there. You can find him at Late Kick Josh on social media. And you can also see him on CBS Sports HQ. Thanks again for joining us.
I appreciate you having me, man.
That was Josh Pate from Late Kick Live. Super excited to have had him here on the Locked On Wolverines podcast and to get a little insight from him. That just breezed by. I told him 15 minutes. We went 15 minutes. It felt like it lasted 3, and that's not always the case. So that dude is a pro. So that was absolutely awesome to finally get him on the show. I've been running into him for years, from 2021 onward. Anyway, we were gonna continue forward. We are gonna discuss Amarian Walker coming back to Michigan as a wide receiver and how that maybe impacts the room. And we're gonna get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, there's a lot of things that you're gonna want to do this spring and summer. Chief among them is getting out in the sunshine. One of the best ways that you can do that is going to a Major League Baseball game. And there's one place that can help you get into that Major League Baseball game faster, easier, cheaper than any other option, and that's Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace as well of the NBA. See, changed it up because that's going to be another option for you. NBA playoffs are in full swing. It makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier, which I think back to some of the times I went to NBA playoff games back in the aughts. It was not easy. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, no matter what it is. And I think one of my favorite things is the view from your seat. So you know you're not going to have any obstructions. You know exactly what you're going to be looking at. You're not surprised when you get to the venue. It is an absolute game changer, and it is one of my favorite parts of it. So from priority last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all of that, flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, the lowest price guarantee where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, or with the ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to the NBA playoff games, to Major League Baseball games, whatever it might be. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, go to Gametime, whether it's the app or the website, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, again, big thanks to Josh Pate for joining our little rinky-dink show, which takes place in my second bedroom. My second bedroom, which is absolutely cluttered. If you were to see the difference between what you see on video and what this room actually looks like, there's a treadmill over there. There's just, I've never really done anything with a lot of the boxes. There's still a bunch of boxes and stuff. I've been here a year. And those need to probably go into the basement or into the garage. Has not happened as of yet. But when we aspire to eventually have a set like his, and the spare house in the back that we have on this property will eventually be that. But it's going to take a lot of money that I currently do not have to renovate that and turn that into the studio space that it will eventually be. Got to run electrical out there. Got to insulate and drywall and redo the floors and all of that. But eventually, in the coming years, I was hoping I would have it done by now. It is not the case. But in the coming years, we will have a much more glamorous studio space. Anyway, so Amarian Walker, as I was out on a little bit of a stroll with Zuri, Amarian Walker comes back into the fold, and we've gotten some clarity since I had even posted my article once I got back saying that he is returning. I do still believe that even though he is coming back as a wide receiver, if the push actually came to shove and they needed him as a corner, that's a possibility. Playing both ways could be a possibility, but it does sound like he's going to be focusing on wide receiver. So Michigan got two wide receivers between CJ Charleston and Amorion Walker through the transfer portal yesterday. It's funny how big that is for Michigan to get Amarian Walker back, because now your class is from 2023. We went through the names and everything, right? Or should they say 2022 rather? He's a 2022 class guy. We went through the names of 2023 yesterday. It is that at least gives you a little bit more of a foothold. Or was it 2023? I can't remember what years or what. But we went through them, and we saw the names like Darius Clemens and things of that nature. But you had three wide receivers in that class, and you only had one remaining in Tyler Morris, and now you've at least got one back in Amarian Walker. So the good news is he's 6'4". He is ultra fast, super athletic. The question is can he get his hands in order? Can he be that go-to wideout, right? And if he can, then that's going to bode extremely well for Michigan. And then you could actually pair him and Kendrick Bell as being those big, tough, take the top off the defense guys. Obviously, I know that that's also what they want from Frederick Moore, who's at 6 foot. But to have the taller guys, at least they're kind of somewhat getting back into having some of those guys on the roster. So apparently, Amarian Walker went on a little bit of a rumspringa. It took a sabbatical, went down to Oxford for literally one semester. It's funny because it feels like he's been gone forever, but he's only been gone for a minute. So nonetheless, he is back in the fold. That only bodes well for Michigan. And certainly that is exactly what the team needs, is to have those big, tall wide receivers. And it's probably better to get a guy that a guy that you feel like you can probably trust, rather than going out and getting a guy that you've just heard about, you've seen on tape and everything like that, right? They know what they have in Amarian Walker, what he's capable of. Obviously, they brought him in for a reason, and apparently he's willing to suffer winter again. You know what? If I was in his shoes, it gets to be, December, January, and I have an option to go down south for 4 months, 5 months, I'm going to take it every single time personally. So I can't fault him too much for that. Now, obviously, we talked last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago, about his incapability somewhat at cornerback. So I think that switching him back as he returns is a good move. But maybe he does, ascend really, because I mean, he only had a little time on task at cornerback, and if he can actually, if he could figure that out, he could be a two-way player. But it is probably for the best at the moment to have him come back as a wide receiver, especially because they need bodies there. So that is exciting that he is back in the fold. It's a little different than getting a different guy that you can be excited about. This is one that you can be excited about that was already around, and certainly we'll see how he does. All right, that's going to do it for this episode today, an earlier than normal one for us since we like to do the nighttime shows. But we will be back. I'm going to put a call out for a mailbag. We'll do a mailbag on Friday, and we will go from there. So anyway, thanks again to Josh Pate for joining the show. Thank you for watching and or listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.